And for something like this, if you actually want to manipulate it, but you notice that all that happens is that one face is selected, and all you're doing is manipulating that one face. But for like organic features, you probably want it to kind of be a little bit more smooth and not so rigid. So what you can do is you can come down here to the bottom where this little circle is, and it says proportional editing. It's disabled by default, but if you put it on enable or connected, let's put it on enable. Now if I try to manipulate by grabbing, a little circle pops up. And what that does is that's a sphere of influence essentially. And so as I grab it now, see the other faces start moving as well. And so you can actually adjust the, let me just, oops. I'm going to actually just move this kind of back. So now you see actually I can like make this little indentation here, which is kind of funny looking. But so now with the proportional editing on, if I grab or if I scale even, I can scale all the other faces around it will be affected. So now we can create this kind of like bulge, right?
Can you change the shape of that influential circle? Oh, sorry, the
yes.
size of it?
So then what we would do is if you have the only way I know how to do it is just do like a scrolling option.
How do you move that white circle? Okay.
Yeah. So I was going to say if you do a scrolling, you can actually change the size. So you change the sphere of influence. So I could change this way. So now it only really, when I'm scaling now, and it's only affecting the very nearest neighbors. And then you can actually start doing the manipulation and then do like a scrolling and see how much of a manipulation you want to have. Okay, so we can change the sphere of influence by scrolling.
How did you get there? I missed it.
Oh, I'm sorry. So so I have proportional editing on. I have it enabled down here, right? There's a little button with a circle, right? It says proportional editing when you open it up. If you click enable or connected, and then try doing a manipulation like grab, rotate, or scale by hitting SR. Then I'm doing grab right now. With that sphere of influence, I'm manipulating all of the faces within that sphere of influence. So you can see that a lot of faces just aren't being manipulated, but this one in particular is. Okay. So I did want to show you. All right. I'm going to jump ahead. There's a few things I definitely want to show you. I want to show you some basic. I just want to show you basic animation, and I want to show you Metaballs, which can be really useful if you're modeling. If you're trying to model molecules by hand, maybe, or if you're trying to create like a fluid cell scenario. So we hit Shift-A. We're going to add an object. I won't talk about curves or surfaces, although NURBS are interesting objects that Blender is not as good at manipulating as something like, say, Maya or 3D Max, I think. But there's a lot of other things that Blender can do with meshes that make them NURB-like. And basically, that's just a mathematical calculation. So you have a few control points, and you have this kind of flexible surface. But what I want to show you now is metaballs, or meta objects. So there's several different objects we can choose from. I'm just going to choose a metaball, add that to the scene. I'm going to come up to my top view, and I'm going to hit Shift-D, which allows us to duplicate. You can also duplicate an object by coming up here into the Tools panel and clicking Duplicate. Now what happens is I created this meta object. Now you see this funky feature of meta objects is that they start to actually kind of flow into each other, which is kind of what you would expect for like vesicles kind of fusing together, or say a budding yeast cell. I could actually scale this particular one down and say I want to make this look like a shmoo of a budding yeast, if you guys are familiar with that term. But you know what? I'm gonna come out of this right now. And I'm sorry I didn't get much chance to go through this, but there's this properties panel which allows you to adjust a lot of properties of different objects. And if we pull this out a little bit, we can see more of the options. So by default we're set up in the scene or render options, but in this case I want to go over to meta objects. I'm going to scroll in a little bit. Now you look, it looks kind of chunky. It doesn't really look that great. So the way we do this is go to View for our 3D view, and we actually make it smaller. So you can actually drag it, and you'll see that as you go to higher values, it becomes more boxy. If you go to smaller values, it becomes more smooth. So now if I grab this object, you can see it kind of makes this nice, smooth kind of transition fusing in one object into the other, which can be really cool if you're trying to create like an animation of two vesicles like fusing into each other and make something really look organic. The difference between view and render, they affect the same thing, except the render adjusts what the computer actually renders when you render the scene, and view affects what you're actually looking at when you're manipulating the object in the 3D view. And the reason we do this is to actually save on computation, because a lot of these processes are computationally intensive. And so to make the computer work a little bit faster for you while you're manipulating them, you actually want to reduce the burden on the computer while you're manipulating things and moving around your scene, and then let it do the real fancy stuff when you're actually rendering for an image. So I'll drag this down to 0.05 for render and make this look real boxy here. So it doesn't really look very good here. I'll go to my camera view, and then if I actually go to render under the render settings, should be able to render, and you'll see a nice kind of smooth. That's like a budding yeast cell right there, right? Okay. So I'm going to come out of that. Okay.
How do you achieve to get it within the camera?
Right. So, I mean, you can go to camera view, and if you see your objects anywhere in here, you can try to like manipulate them to like stay within your view plane. Let me just drop this down. Okay, like that. Or alternatively, you can come out of the camera and just look around your scene and move objects. Yeah, one thing you can do is you can change the size of the camera. Now that doesn't really mean anything, right? The camera doesn't really have any size. It doesn't have any pertinence, but yeah. You mean in terms of capturing things in the scene, or yeah? So what I mean, it's not going to affect the render, right? But what it does is if you do this, you can see, oh yeah, okay, like I can look in different perspectives and see that the camera is actually capturing the object. So we can scale up the size. Of course, we can change the dimensions of the render as well by going to settings in the scene panel. We can adjust the resolution. We can change the X dimension. Well, yeah, it looks like we're changing the Y dimension. We are, but there's a maximum X dimension, and then we can change the dimensions of the scene that we eventually want to render. And you probably want to select that based on like whatever type of image you want to present for whatever type of format you're doing.
But I mean, let's say you have a 3D view that you like on screen. Can you tell the camera to go there?
Yes. Okay. Yep. Sorry. So, okay. All right. So let's say, yeah, I'm right here, and I say, you know what, I actually like that perspective. I don't like where the camera currently is. What you can do is, I think you hit Control-Alt-0, okay? And then what that will do is it will force the current active camera to jump to the scene, to the view that you have. Now, you might see this, like right now, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, it zoomed way too in. I want to zoom the camera out. The way we can do this is by hitting Shift-F. We go into fly mode. Now, what we can do to control this is we can actually use the keys, Shift-F, and we can use the scroll option to scroll in and scroll out. All right. Alternatively, we can use the A, W, S, and D keys. S and W will allow you to, W makes you move in, S makes you move out, and then D and A will allow you to scroll pan to the left or pan to the right. All right, so I'm going to go to fly mode, Shift F, and then, and then move out to about there. And now when we render our image, we'll get a different view. Now notice we're getting kind of like the dark side of the moon effect here, right, because of where the lamp is. So that we can always go back and adjust where we put the lamp. You can actually grab it and start moving the lamp in your scene right from the camera perspective, and then we click Image, and now we move the light to the other side. Okay. Let's see. Okay, 10 more minutes. So very quickly, let's play around with color, because I'm sure a lot of you are dying to know, as I was, about how to actually add color to the scene. Let's see. All right. So if we open up our properties panel here, which is one of the windows, we've got all these options. And one of the things that we can do is come over to something called material. Now, one thing that's maybe a little intuitive for some people coming into Blender or these other graphics programs is that materials are treated as kind of independent entities that you can be applied to any other entity, right? Any other three-dimensional object. So you can make a material that almost sits in the memory as a separate object. And then anytime you want to, you make a new object and you go, oh wait, I like that material I used before, I want to apply it to this new object, you can just call up that material. So in this case, I'm going to come over to this little circular button here, and it says material. If you hover over it, it gives you a tooltip. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to press new. And this is going to give us a series of options that we can look through to actually to affect the view of our object. And it actually gives us a little preview window, which is helpful. So I'm going to click on diffuse, which is essentially going to be the color of the object as we see it. It gives us a color wheel. I'm just going to click down here. We can make this pink color, or we can make it green or deep blue. And we can, of course, change the RGB values, hue, saturation, and value. The value parameters that give you a different option. Or you can enter the hexadecimal code for the particular color that you want to use. That's kind of an HTML standard for web display.